I'm Nick Terzo, and you are listening to The Radical. Today I'm joined by another Austin musician. She and her band create records with a blend of many different styles and sonic landscapes. The band continues to build a large following and will be playing this year's ACL Festival. Heartless Bastards singer-songwriter Erika Wennerstrom joins me to discuss songwriting, her new record, A Beautiful Life, and getting beyond shyness as a performer. Coming up, my conversation with Erika Wennerstrom. Hi, Erika. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm happy to speak to another person here in Austin now that we're kind of based here now. So I'm kind of very curious to speak to everyone in the Austin community as far as musicians. So thank you.
Well,
You're number 2, I think. So you have a new record coming up this month called A Beautiful Life. Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Awesome. And when did you record this prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic?
I finished it March 1st of 2020. So it was just kind of right before things were shutting down. Yeah. I'm glad I was able to, complete that. It would have been I know people have done that, but just organizing everything and getting musicians in and everything. So, yeah. Yeah,
because it looks like you have quite a few guest players, musicians, singers. I mean, it's quite an kind of an undertaking on your behalf. So this was all done physically in a place.
Yeah. My first string quartet.
So awesome. It's definitely ambitious. And it has like many different styles. So you're kind of doing a lot of different things stylistically, which is fascinating.
I just am very much inspired by so many different types of music and music from different cultures, and just finding ways to put it together that also fit within rock and roll and just sort of an Americana. And it was very fun to experiment and explore. Yeah.
Well, tell me so let me try to understand the band a little bit, because I think of you and then I think of a band, and then this record, there's so many other players. Then I'm thinking, well, is Erika the band too? Are you the Heartless Bastard, or is there others that are a permanent part of the band?
I am now starting my third iteration. I started the band in Cincinnati in 2004. And my boyfriend played bass, Mike Lamping at the time, and we were together about 10 years. And when we split, I moved to Austin and I started over. And I had session musicians on the mountain, and then I formed a new live band from old friends from Ohio, actually, we toured. We did 2 albums together, but we toured for 3 album cycles and worked together for about 10 years. But we toured pretty heavy for about I guess it was about 8 years or so. And when we decided to take a hiatus, and then I got really inspired, and I love my team, so I thought, I just got really inspired, and I'm going to do this album under my name, and so I did Sweet Unknown, and then just the timing's not lining up, but I reach so much more people with the band name, and I realize it's always been my thing. I write the songs, and I just didn't feel like it was fair to myself to sort of wait until everybody's timing perfectly lined up with this material, because I think it's a message that people need, and the band name has a lot more reach.
That makes sense. And so, why don't you share with me who some of the players are on this, or people that have contributed from other bands, and how they contributed?
Well, yeah, on the album, I had Gregory Clifford played drums. He's in the band White Denim, or was in the band White Denim, and I had Bo. I don't know how to say his last name. Koster. It's Koster from My Morning Jacket. He played keys, and also Jesse from Midlake. I'm blanking on people's last names right now, but Jesse from Midlake, and he also plays in Mercury Rev. Did some keys as well, and he did this like entire woodwind section of layers on the song Doesn't Matter Now in like an hour. I was like, I call it the Disney part. There's a part of that song that's kind of inspired by Bambi. I just picture like Bambi and like little butterflies fluttering around. He does these little flute flutters, a lot of this album is a bit getting in touch with my inner child and that sort of time where things don't seem impossible, or you sort of like practically talk yourself out of whatever it is, and let's see who else. I had Lauren Gergiolo, who's played with me for years, and she was in the band Ockerville River. And David Polkingham, who's played with Patty Griffin for years. He did some amazing, just beautiful guitar parts. And Andrew Bird is a guest on there, and he is just otherworldly. It's like he's from another planet.
Do one song with you, or do you do a few songs?
He did one. He does like a subtle part in the beginning of the song, The River, and then he just lets loose at the end of it. And it was kind of like my sort of, let's see. Well, the song Baba O'Reilly, it's my sort of, I love at the end of that song how there's this, all of a sudden the whole vibe of the song changes, and then it goes into this sort of gypsy fiddle part. So the song is very different than that, but it's sort of the vibe changes in the song a bit. And the entrance of the song is my friend Farid Shanafury, who plays this beautiful Persian sitar part, which is different than the Indian sitar. They're spelled different. They're completely different instruments. I'm sure I'm missing people. I had a wonderful cast of folks. Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, and Jesse who's been in the band for like the last 8 or 10 years or so. He played on my solo record too, and he's not going to be in the touring band, but he did join me live. He joined me on the record. Yeah.
Awesome. No, that was kind of the one word I was going to ascribe to some of this that I had listened to, was like kind of whimsical.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like in a lot of the songs kind of fit that. So you're definitely playing with that. The interesting part though, too, is like you have a song called How Low, and it's kind of interesting because it seems a little prescient to kind of where we are today, and it's obviously was written a little, pre pandemic, it feels like, but it kind of summarizes, I don't know, our condition today a little bit.
That song is a bit of it's like my frustration with the sort of excessive capitalism. I just think the planet can't sustain the rate of consumption, and I think that we have the capabilities to make products that biodegrade and things that would be much more sustainable for our planet and our species. But it's just the system isn't create, I feel like our government needs to give subsidies to biodegradable rather than oil. Oil makes plastics. And, I mean, God, I heard this NPR thing about like excessive plastics in your system. If it's in the placenta, there's scientific evidence that boys will have low fertility. It's like we're just gonna wipe ourselves out as a species. We have to like do something about it, or we're kind of at a critical mass on that. And a lot of that song, it's just kind of, I think it's a question that we should even ask ourselves, like when, where is our moral compass at? And when we make decisions on how we affect others, and at what point when we're working towards something for ourselves, if we can negatively affect others, we need to check in on that, and so it's not really meant to point fingers. It's just a question that I think we all need to ask ourselves. Mm-hmm. Native Americans have this, the 7 generations, and they think about the actions that they do, how they affect 7 generations of people. And it's hard to even go beyond like the grandchildren generation at this point, and so I don't know, it's a bit of a frustration song. And it's really ultimately just about loving one another and kind of trying to look at really kind of what is most important. Yeah. Or what I think is.
Yeah. So it did somewhat address the world condition, but it was interesting that it came, at a time while we're in the middle of a pandemic too, which is the greatest, it turns into quite a mass extinction event. It's heading in that direction anyway. So are you planning, coupled with that, are you planning touring then in this environment? Can you guys go out and you have dates on the books, I assume?
Yeah, we have a tour that starts in, 3 weeks or maybe even a few days less than that. When we went forth with the tour, the breakthrough case wasn't a thing at that point. So it felt like a fine call to sort of go forward. And, I think that we're going to continue forth, but implement some sort of protocols in the venues, and we're working with the venues and doing our best to, if this is the new normal, we're going to have to figure out how best to adapt. It's been really interesting. As a musician, I've never imagined a few years ago being in this position where, I get once in a while I'll get like a nasty message. I got some really nasty message yesterday from somebody saying that the venue in Columbia has introduced like these COVID protocols, and I don't know. I was actually really kind and patient. I took the time and I responded and I said, these are protocols, but they're not forced vaccination, or certainly not forced because it's a rock concert. You don't have to go. But, a negative test is seems like a reasonable thing right now. I think that's even for their own protection, knowing that other folks, and I think with breakthrough cases, it's something where we're going to have to keep distance, or folks mask up, or, I don't know. I'm saying we're as in just musicians in general as a whole. I think we're all just doing the best that we can to figure out how to make this work. And the venom here and there, and sometimes it's easy to remember the venom when I think the reality is most people are pretty supportive of these protocols and understanding. And, but if one of us gets sick, we're going to have to shut it down. And then and really there's no unemployment for musicians. There's no unemployment for the self-employed, so we're I mean, maybe that's a question I have to ask myself. How low will, like at what point does making money like override, keeping people safe? But we're just sort of going to do our best to sort of find how to do that.
Right. But is that burden really on each individual artist, or is it the venues kind of taking the lead on protocols that they're enforcing? Or does the artist have something in their riders or whatever in their contract saying, hey, this is the way we're playing it?
I don't think it's straight across the board. I think in certain states or certain venues would happily insist upon it. And then I think that it depends, but there are certain things that, I think we have taken it upon having the venue set protocols, but I'm going to check in with my manager and see where that's at, because I also want to make sure that if there are some, that have very lax, what exactly are we getting into, and because I think, at this point, the band's vaccinated, and I feel like we all have a sense of comfort that we're less likely to be hospitalized, but it doesn't mean that our operation won't get shut down for, right, a week or so. And the tour's only 3.5 weeks long. So, I mean, the first leg,
right.
So.
And as part of that, are you playing ACL? You're scheduled to play ACL this year?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's still a green light at this point, right?
Yeah, I think they've instituted some protocols, and it's outdoors too. And I think consistently the outdoors has been, the open air has been good as far as gatherings in some ways during this time. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you excited? Have you played before, I assume?
Yeah. I think I've played there 3 or 4 times. I don't even know anymore. At this point, I think the band's almost 20 years old or something, so.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's interesting, I wanted to flip back in time for a minute because, as an artist, to be starting something like back then, like, when the music business was kind of going through a transition and, maybe at the beginning of your career at some of its lowest points, and maybe it didn't matter to you because you weren't playing their game necessarily, but it was definitely a different set of economics back then. And no one knew what was going to happen in the music business. I mean, all they kept seeing was piracy and where's this going to go? So I don't know if there's a question in there. I just think it was an interesting time as an artist to kind of start something based on, I don't know, what would I call it? Just the tides that seemed to be going in a different direction back then.
I mean, it's still that way. I mean, I look at the music industry. It's kind of like consistently like the Wild West. It's I guess, even though I guess I'm working on, I'm about to release my 7th album, but I will say that every album I release, there is something so different about the climate. When I first released, CDs were the big thing and piracy, but people were still buying a lot of CDs. I actually personally self-pressed my 2nd album on vinyl because Fat Possum didn't think that it made sense to do vinyl. But so many people in my community that were music lovers were really getting in, or maybe not just getting into it, but just, really maintaining that interest of that format. And then vinyl just got bigger and bigger with each release. Now with Spotify, when I released Arrow, we played South by Southwest that year. And I remember we did one of those South by Southwest parties at the Spotify house. And it was like, what's this thing? You know, it was like the launch party or something like that, you know? And so, within that 3 years, streaming became such a huge thing. And I don't know, every kind of, even just, yeah, I mean, there just seems to be these trends that happen. Something works really well in promotion. That's my dog Piper. I don't know. There must be some kind of random bark in the neighborhood. Piper, come on. I don't know. It's like almost like I can't keep up, you know. And I think in order to survive in the music industry in any form, whether you're a record label, a musician, a manager, whatever it is, you have to kind of be adaptable and go with the flow, because there's just not like the way things are done and then you get better and better and better at that way. You have to constantly be innovative and learn how to adapt. And there's a song on the album called The River. That's the one with Andrew Bird and the Persian sitar from Farid. And I mean, that whole song to me is just like about like the idea of adapting and sort of, we're made of water and, or primarily. And I sometimes in my life, I feel like I'm swimming upstream, but I just got to let go sometimes and go with the flow and just adapt and just be okay with whatever's coming at me and roll with the punches or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah. No, you've seen a lot in 20 years. I mean, it's definitely a different period. And, the thing, some of the things that are put on artists now, especially with the social media part of it, it's just with such a, I'm a former A&R guy, so I find it a distraction for artists to have to spend so much time on that part of their lives rather than creating and writing. And I don't know. So I have a kind of a bad view of it, but
yeah, I do it sometimes. And I guess once in a while there's something I might have fun with the post, but to be honest, although I'm quite vocal in this podcast today. I've had a lot of coffee, but I'm just really introverted, and the social media thing is very difficult for me because I'm just not. Yeah, I'm just still, after 20 years, I don't think that it gets easier for me to do stuff like that. I mean, I finally started talking a little more on stage. I mean, my first 3 albums, I got like, "Hi, how are you?" and "Thank you for coming," and maybe one more sentence in there for the whole night. I've stretched out a little,
Good for you. I can't wait to see what you'll be in 40 years. So who are some of your kind of earlier influences on you, musician wise, or not even, I don't know, art, painters, who influenced you as an artist?
Well, I would say from an early childhood, Shel Silverstein. I loved his sort of cadence of language. And I think I even mimicked that on some songs on my first album. He had this song, "Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too, went for a ride in a flying shoe." And I have this song called Pass and Fail. And I say, well, it's hard to predict in the end what you get if you're climbing a wall that is infinitely tall. And I felt like the cadence is very Shel Silverstein to me. I got into classic rock a lot when I was a young adult. I thought it seemed, I don't know, when you can hear it every day on the radio. When I was in high school, it was uninteresting to me because it's just always there, maybe I'd took it for granted in some way. But when I really started working on songcraft, I was bartending, and like When the Levee Breaks would come on the jukebox a lot. And that song, I feel like there's aspects of that song that I mimic at least once on every album I do. And so I would say Led Zeppelin's probably one of my favorite bands of all time. Yeah, tons of, and Bob Dylan is a huge influence on my life. My aunt, when I was a kid, would talk to me about Bob Dylan lyrics, which went completely over my head. She would be like, Erika, you hear that? It doesn't take a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. And I'm just like, maybe like 7 years old sitting in the passenger seat, like, okay. But I, as a teenager, would go to a lot of Bob Dylan shows with her. And it just blows my mind, Charlie living here in Austin, and then we've become friends. I don't know, I pinch myself, like, but it made me consciously think about messages and lyrics and things, where I was always gravitating to melody, but knowing that my aunt was such more a lyrics person and would always talk to me about that, it made me realize I needed to do my best to sort of have both, the melody and the lyrics. And I do my best with it,
We all try. You're doing well. So
Thank
you've made a
you.
career out of it. I think you're doing quite well. And speaking to you, I get a sense of, your empathy and your sensitivity to kind of our world, the environment we're in. And I just find the irony of the band name. So is that kind of some kind of shield for you that when you came up with that name? Because you're clearly not a heartless bastard. So
I look back and I do think it was a bit of a shield. I was this sort of very awkward, introverted, young 20-year-old. And, but I had developed, I got really into punk rock, and Joan Jett was also somebody that I just loved so much as a kid. I just thought, and I still do, she's just the coolest, and it was like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and that I got off work at a bar I worked at in Dayton, Ohio. I lived in Cincinnati and I was commuting back there for a while, and I was doing one of those trivia games, those like bar top ones, and it had asked what Tom Petty's backing band was. And Tom Petty and the Heartless Bastards was the wrong answer. And we just laughed so hard. And I thought, man, that sounds really catchy and tough, like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And I've kind of grappled with that name over the last 10 years or so. I used to think it was funny when I started the band, and once we had developed a following in Cincinnati, I would be driving down the street and somebody would yell out the window, "You heartless bastard." And we'd just look at each other and laugh, But I'm 43 now, and it's not a name I would choose now. And when I did the solo album, I thought, maybe I'll continue going on that, but I don't know. With my solo album, I had worked with a lot of sort of facing my shadow a bit and working on sort of the whole self-love thing. And I kind of realized it's just like kind of going forward with this name that maybe it's a reminder to me to keep my sense of humor, and it's meant to be lighthearted, maybe. And and I think I'll reach more people with these songs, and I guess looking back with that, it's just like embracing my whole self and my decisions I made 20 years ago, and not having like regrets, just sort of acceptance of that's what I chose, and I'm gonna laugh my way through that, So yeah.
sounds tough. So
It doesn't it? It sounds like tough and rock and roll, and yeah.
I like it. I like it. Well,
Thank
thank you for your time. I'm really grateful. It was nice to meet you. And the record is A Beautiful Life. It's out now. It's a really, really good record. I mean, and it covers a lot of ground stylistically. So it's very ambitious.
Thank
so congratulations.
You. Thank you so much. I'm really proud of it, and I'm so happy to be, releasing it and touring on it. Yeah.
You should be. So
you.
I hope to see you on the road, and stay safe out there.
You too. Yeah, take care.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Erika.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. This show originates from the podcast capital, Austin, Texas. My producer is Sean O'Neill. Visit theradicalpod.com for updates and even some merchandise. Also, please subscribe at Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I also ask that you please share episodes with your friends so we can continue to grow our community. See you all again next Friday.